Hello everyone, and welcome to a brand new Let's Play of Hearts of Iron 4, the New Order, Last Days of Europe, version 1.5.0c, The Ruin, where we shall be playing Empire of Japan. Now, those of you that know my playthroughs are aware that this would be the place where I jump into the context and history of the nation we will be playing. But this time it will be a little bit different, because frankly, I do not know the context or the situation we will be jumping in, apart from the very broad strokes of the canvas of the world. For those of you that are not familiar with the New Order mod, it covers the Cold War era, but with a twist. It is the Axis, meaning Germany, Italy, Japan and their allies and puppets, that won the Second World War. In this frankly terribly grim world, we will embark on a blind playthrough that will be a direct continuation of my Black Ice campaign, which has ended in a decisive victory for the fascist powers. You don't have to worry, however. We will not be coasting in this one any more than we would in any other game, as we will be forced to face the extremely grim world of politics, world-spanning crises and deception. I already mentioned that this will be a blind playthrough, and I mean it. I played the mod before, but only as Germany, and I never ever touched Japan. I have seen it in the game, of course, but as it was one of our major enemies, a secretive one at that, we never really learned much about it, apart from facing it a number of times in our proxy wars. I have on purpose just tested that the mod loads and runs. I never read anything about Japan, and I'm looking forward to discovering it with you. Now, I'm well aware that it might be a good idea to do so. By that I mean to check it out, because there are some hidden endings and stuff like that, but I still prefer to do it blind so that you get my honest reaction, because I know most of you enjoy that. As usual, before we delve into this playthrough, a fair warning: this episode will be a setup one, where we will discover what our situation is, what steps lay ahead of us, and what mechanics we need to keep in mind, as TNO brings a lot to the table. We will look in detail on everything, examine and ponder, and if it's not your thing, skip to episode number 2. However, before you do, please note that this is a mod that puts an extremely heavy emphasis on the story, which means tons and tons of reading and decision making. We will most likely never really declare war on anyone. Instead, we will focus on intrigue, politics, proxy wars, and on keeping our already vast empire together in one uniform bunch. If I'm not mistaken, the only times we actually did fight anyone as the Reich was a civil war, so ironically we only fought ourselves. There was a final clash with the Russians though, but due to the choices we made through the game, it was more of a whimper than a proper climax to the playthrough, which, anyway, we found our ending in the final reforms of the Reich rather than somewhere outside of our scope of influence. With all that said, I do hope you will join me for this, because I'm deeply in love with this mod and I'm very happy that we are revisiting it. It is a masterpiece of writing and alternate history, and it will be our companion for the next couple of weeks, if not months. So without further ado, let us start. So we'll go with the single player. Scenario 1962. The New Order. With the triumph of the Axis over the Allied powers, a new order has descended upon the world. In the places of Union Jack and the hammer and sickle now soar the rising sun and swastika. A single light flickers desperately against the night in the United States. Germany celebrates the first man on the moon as Europe chafes, and Japan lines its pocket as China's slumber slowly breaks. The Mediterranean lies on a knife's edge, and what remains of Russia prepares to realize its destiny. Now, one thing that I want to mention before we start reading all of the info here is that they added a bunch of interesting things here. When we look at Japan, we will now see that in the Ruin, it received a bunch of new updates, which is amazing. I actually really like this, as well as the fact that they added some notes about future content being added, and the yellow lines, whatever that is, I think it might be a bullet belt. I'm not sure. It says that coming in Penelope's Web. So I guess that's gonna be the next update after the Ruin, where all of these are going to be reworked. But we are actually really lucky. I didn't even notice that for the Ruin they reworked Japan. So Dai Nippon Teikoku, new in the Ruin, facelifted content for all three Japan paths and their subpaths, rebalanced proxies, rework of the daily crisis, and new oil crisis content. There exists a certain duality in life. For every winner there exists a defeated. For every fallen there exists a risen. And for every ruin there exists a place that has risen to new heights, a place that has reached its zenith. Imperial Japan appears to be the picture of such a place, an empire spanning an entire continent, a flourishing economy characterized by decades of continuous growth and a stable governance under the watch of the YSK. But within this facade, there lie many cracks that threaten its foundation and risk bringing the greatest power in Asia to its knees. After all, if you have reached the top, the only way is to go down. Can Japan continue its momentous rise? Can Ino, or fate forbid, those that may follow him, manage the intrigues of Japan's House of Cards and survive through a decade of revolutions and self-determination? Only time will tell. We invite you to see Japan's story for yourself, to reach for the new heights while managing the deadly lows that will plague it through the decade, to enjoy the lovingly improved content it offers and to chart its destiny, be it an entry into a new era or the continuation of the old. Wow, that's gonna be amazing. So, we're gonna play Japan. Its leader is Ino Hiroya. Ideology is fascist, and you have the YSK ruling party Hoshu Honryu, and we never have elections. So, brief history of Japan. The sun never sets on the Japanese empire, or at least it hasn't yet. Reigning over the single largest population of any nations on Earth, the Japanese maintain the largest military, industrial base, and navy in the world. With treaty ports in America and ownership of the Pacific, Japan has gone from a shut-in nation behind the Europeans to the masters of the sea and land. All is not well, however, as the increasingly Byzantine imperial court constantly undermines the monarchy, and the more Japan uses China's resources, the more their grip on the colonies slip. Very ominous. The leader is Ino Hiroya. Daily political power gain lowered by 0.05 and stability by 5%. Great. Ino Hiroya is not a popular man. Originally a mere representative in the imperial diet, Ino skillfully maneuvered his way through the Byzantine affairs of Japanese politics to help overthrow Tojo Hideki himself, and then later his political rival Kido Koichi. But things are never so simple. To bring down such political beasts, Ino had to out a few backroom deals. More than a few, really. And while those connections initially seemed useful, the obligations on Ino's end have piled up, and he has been forced to work for various special interests rather than the people of Japan. Ino is a firm believer in the imperial system and desires to keep the emperor above most political discussion. Ino's party, the Imperial Rule Assistance Association, is the sole legal party in Japan and encompasses a broad coalition of representatives with various ideologies, but can be corralled into keeping the Chrysanthemum throne safe and secure from the rough and tumble politics of the Diet. However, Ino is rapidly losing control over his own party, and his departure from the office of Prime Minister seems all but inevitable. Many within the Diet who would like to see Ino ousted, much in the same way he once bested Tojo and Kido, including Kido himself, who has found ways to still remain relevant in Japanese politics. If enough wishes for his ideals to be upheld and for his faction to survive, he must once again find his way safely through Japan's murky politics, as he has done so many times before. Okay, so Ino Hiroya, a little bit of an anti-hero it seems. I wonder what kind of deals he has cut, or he had cut in the past. So the ruling part is YSK. Corporatism, from the Latin word for the human body, is one of the earliest economic models that present itself as a third position to counter both capitalism and socialism. It is subject to a great many influences, from classical Greek philosophy to leftist syndicalism, but it was ultimately the proto-fascists who dominated the legacy of corporatism. It became deeply associated with Catholic and other religious traditionalism, integralism. Okay, I'm not familiar with that thought path. Integralism and clerical fascism in the interwar years, and it served as a model to people such as Gabriel D'Annunzio, Engelbert Dollfuss, and Antonio Salazar. While corporatism is collectivist and believes economic classes are a fundamental unit of society, it teaches that the greatest good can only be achieved through class collaboration rather than class struggle. Workers and employers alike are organized into some form of corporate body, be it guilds, syndicates, trade unions, or worker cooperatives, based on their industry, and it would be these corporate bodies that lobby the government on their behalf. The amount of representation the individual is afforded in the government is subject to variance, but usually often very little. Corporatism is also marked by a heavy preference towards a traditionalistic interpretation of the moral codes prevalent in the locality, especially with regard to marriage, sexuality, family structure, and popular media. Well, Japan is a very traditional country, so this seems in line with who they are. Okay, so the modifiers here that we have, we've already read the Yokusan Seijikai. Now we have the Showa Emperor. Daily political power gain increased by 0.2 and stability by plus 10%. Hirohito, the Showa Emperor, is portrayed by the state as the symbol of the endless endurance and the victories of our empire and her continued stability and growth. Ever since Hirohito's ascension to the throne, he had been indifferent to politics and perhaps had lost the hope and the desire to rectify the empire's mistakes and wrongdoings. Yet he stands there with his name and alleged will being borrowed freely by the politicians as a weapon to throw at their enemies. Well, why bother to care, Hirohito thinks. Okay. The legacy of Rentokuan Showa 45. Army experience gain lowered by 10%. War shall reveal the true state of the Japanese military. Starting in 1948, both the Imperial Army and the Imperial Navy would conduct joint military maneuvers in the South China Sea every 4 years, referred to as Reiku Kaigun, Rengo Tokubetsu, Enshu, or Rentokuan in short. Most recently, the Rentokuan of Showa 35 has resulted in a rather mediocre performance. As such, there has been much uncertainty about the state of the Imperial Armed Forces. War shall reveal the true state of the Japanese military. We had something similar with Germany, but on a little bit of a different... Well, I mean, they were ruined by the incessant debt, so hopefully we're in a little bit of a better shape. And the Zaibatsu question. Daily political power gain lowered by 0.5. Resource gain efficiency plus 10%, construction speed plus 7.5%, production efficiency base plus 5%. Massive overarching corporations and conglomerates control nearly every facet of Japanese life. While they provide great benefits such as support and maintenance for the co-prosperity sphere, employment for millions, and some of the finest military equipment for our forces, they also stir major discontent in the colonies use shady business practices, and stifle our local businesses. Some continue to hope that the Zaibatsu system will remain a pillar of stability in the empire. Some already have designs to reform them for the greater good of Japan. Okay, so Germany is forced to deal with the, 80 million slaves or something like that, and will probably have to deal with the Zaibatsu. I mean, corporate deals and corporate monopolies are never really good for, advancement of human civilization and the market in itself. So this is probably going to be something that's gonna haunt us. And we have the 1962 fiscal report, the glory of the sphere, the riches continue. So these are the focuses that we will come to very soon in the game. So let us select the country, Dai Nippon Teikoku. And okay, all of the red nations should be somehow puppeted. So we do truly control most of this area. Manchuria, Mengyang, Republic of China, Republic of Indonesia. Oh, and we... Okay, so we own this area. What about the islands? We do. These are all ours. And I think we have 2 ports over here. We'll have to check it once we enter the game. Okay, now there is a very important choice here for us. They have, instead of the easy, very easy, medium, hard, and very hard options, provide you with the DEFCON values. They're pretty much the same. We played German on DEFCON 2 for hard the game, and for this one we're gonna play DEFCON 1. Now, there is a very specific reason why this is going to be super hard, and it's not the supply consumption or the production efficiency cap lowered by 30%, or the lack of resources penalty plus 80, Jesus Christ, or the lowered research speed by 30%, or the army fuel consumption, the naval fuel consumption, and the air fuel consumption increased by 50%, and the huge benefits that the AI get. It's going to be solely an issue because of our political power gain, which is lowered by 15%. Now, this game is 99% about your political power. You need it for all the major decisions. And I've done a couple of mistakes when playing Germany. Well, I spent a lot of political power and didn't keep a strong enough buffer. And in this one, it's going to be even harder. Instead of minus 10%, we're going to get minus 15%. The fact that our production efficiency cap is minus 30% is insane. Same with the research speed rolled by 30%. Jesus Christ, we're gonna suffer. But I mean, I remember with Germany we were able to pretty much steamroll, everyone if we send them our units as expeditionary forces. So I'm not really afraid of that, but the minus 15 political power is going to be really harsh. Well, okay, I mean, we don't have much of a choice, do we? So let us start the game on DEFCON 1 and see what it brings.
Germany calling. It seems that the famous British resolve is but a distant memory. The inevitable collapse of your defenses.
Man kapituliert er nicht so ohne weiteres. Kapitulation ist eine Frage. Und begrüßen werden dann das gemeinsam geschaffene, wiedererkannte, bitter erfahrene neue Deutsche Reich.
Wow. Okay. Well, the new order. This is actually where we get quite a few tidbits of what is going to happen to us or what we need to deal with. So the entries here will be very valuable, but then there's also a mod info which we will go through and a mod development. I'm just gonna skim through this, but I want to show who is behind this mod just for you and to pay them a little bit of an homage. So Conquest's Bitter Resentment. Jealous of the colonial empires possessed by the Europeans and snubbed by their failure of the racial equality clause in Versailles, the Empire of Japan sought to carve its own imperium within the resource-bountiful but troubled region of East Asia. With the fall of the hated Washington Naval Treaty, it was only a matter of time. Occupying Manchuria, sealing the dead Tsar's bitter rout in 1905 once and for all, in 1941 it reorganized the region into the Empire of Manchuria, or simply Manchukuo. The Kwangtung army had seized Manchuria from the warlords and fiefdoms that had been vying for even scraps of power within its wind-swept hills, when an explosion rocked the Japanese-controlled Mantetsu. Within the backdrop of the Great Depression, an ultimate clash for the fate of the entirety of Asia lay over the horizon. When the dark sky broke, a war like no other would erupt. War's rabid furor. On the 7th of July 1947, the war against China has entered a new savage phase. Japanese forces had cut their way through the Chinese troops in what was named the Marco Polo Bridge incident. While some observers had dismissed the battle as another round of aggressive posturing by Tokyo, it was the first shots of what would become Japan's complete takeover of China. The Chinese-Japanese War, the War of Resistance, or the Second Sino-Japanese War are only some of the names that describe the empire's invasion. However, to those that lived and died through it, only one could encapsulate the conditions of the struggle: hell. Stiff Chinese resistance, in no small part due to the armistice that leaders Mao Zedong and Chiang Kai-shek had signed, prompted Japan to take crueler measures to tame the land they occupied. Burning, looting, and maiming any perceived source of resistance, millions would be sacrificed to Japan's aspirations for resource and Pacific hegemony. Death's uneasy glare. When the war bogged itself down, Japan turned its gaze to the colonial holdings of the West to prop its war economy up. A decisive surprise strike against the American Pacific Fleet at Pearl Harbor, coupled with blinding pushes into the Southeast Asian holdings of the Netherlands, France, and its old ally Great Britain, shattered their perceived racial superiority against the Japanese army. One by one, their prized strongholds failed to protect them against the rising sun's rays. Singapore, Manila, along with the death of General MacArthur, Batavia, Hong Kong were only a sample of the Western failure to outwit and outgun the Imperial Japanese forces. The Americans once more were subject to a fierce defeat at the Battle of Midway, while the forces of the new British Empire failed to contain the offensive in Papua New Guinea, with Australia now in striking distance. Pestilence unyielding grip. Despite the heroic efforts of the United Nations of Asia, the Chinese states, Britain and its empire, and America, they could not hope to match the war machine inside their home islands. Despite resounding reverses by the American Navy and the Anglo-Chinese forces drawing the overextended IJA forces to bloody stalemate, it was all for naught. Both Mao Zedong and Chiang Kai-shek were last reported making a last stand within the fortress city of Chongqing. Due to the pitched hand-to-hand fighting within the city, nobody is quite sure how or when the warlords were killed. America was the last to kneel to the combined forces of the Axis. Despite the two navies dealing crushing blow for blow, America was isolated, yet the worst was to come. On a one Sunday morning over Pearl Harbor, a singular bomb was dropped on Hawaii that would gouge a deep scar across the face of humanity forever. Apocalypse in the Pacific. The atom bomb could not and would not discriminate. Man and beast alike were incinerated in the blast, with even the famous Admiral Nimitz and Admiral Halsey vaporized within seconds. Where women and children played, only a thin layer of black covering the ground mourned their death. What the atom bomb did do, however, was end the largest war ever fought. The faltering public spirit collapsed entirely and convinced the people to sign for an armistice. Manchukuo was recognized as a formal state. China itself was reconstructed into a series of vassal states, the largest of these being the reorganized government of the Republic of China, with the other states such as the state of Guangdong, I'll have to figure out how to pronounce all these Chinese names, being plucked from the remains to serve Japanese interests. Now in 1962, Asia is only a hair's breadth away from complete Japanese domination. Now, the halls of power. The Showa Emperor. What kind of Japan would the Showa Emperor be behind? Given the name being Hirohito, his start was heralded by an assassination attempt on his life in 1942. Moreover, the Showa Emperor now had the Great Depression to deal with, only speeding the militarization of Japanese society underneath the continent-spanning dreams of its generals and prime ministers. Emperor Hirohito's task was to act as a uniting figurehead that guided all of his subjects through turbulence and chaos. But now the Showa Emperor is getting old and reclusive, same as Hitler, by the way. But those who do manage to sneak an encounter with him talk of his erratic behavior or his increasing indulgence in his pursuits. Seemingly, Japan is ruled by Hirohito, but is not being led by the Showa Emperor. Yet, given Japan's near-miraculous victory against all that was thrown against it, perhaps divine fortune did shine down on him after all. The Taisei Yokusenkai, the Imperial Rule Association, or the Imperial Aid Association, romanticized from its native tongue as the romanticized from its native tongue as the Taisei Yokusenkai, is an unemployed servant, to put it callously. Created on the 12th of October 1940, the organization was the crowning apex of the premiership gone badly wrong. The grand masterstroke of Prime Minister Fumimaro Konoe, the Taisei Yokusenkai was smithed from Japan's need to streamline the process of war-making. In order to break the stalemate that has settled over many parts of China, espousing a one-nation, one-party organization policy, Konoe, along with his private research trust, the Showa Kinkuikai, established a framework where every part inside the Japanese Diet would be resettled into a coalition that would coordinate the ongoing war effort without petty squabbling and bitter interpersonal rivalries clouding the judgment of its military leaders. Despite the seemingly unanimous government, to say that the YSK are united. Okay, so it doesn't continue. The YSK's factions. Jockeying for power inside Japan are the four main factions. These are the reformists, led by the war hero Sokichi Takagi, who favor liberalization within Japan to save it from structural rot. Then there are the conservatives, led by Ino Hiroya and his second-in-command Ikeda Masanosuke. Who wish to maintain course and patch the holes inside the Japanese political scene to maintain its strength abroad. So this is our home front, basically, the conservatives. Following them are the technocrats, led by Kaya Okinori. They demand that Japan become a ruthless meritocracy controlled by an elite group of specialists in order to maximize Japan's potential in Asia and make sure it pushes above its weight. Finally, there are the Kidoitas. While not numerous enough to be its own faction, they are the kingmakers inside the Diet. Due to their eponymous leader, Kido Koichi's relationship with the emperor as Lord Keeper of the Private Seal. All these factions must be dealt with for a government to succeed. And the Imperial Army. The Showa Emperor is the heart of the empire. The Taisei Yokusenkai is the mind of Japan. But the Imperial Japanese Army and Navy are the swords and shield of the greater Pan-Asian project that protect them both. The pride of the entire nation, hundreds of thousands of men are ready to lay down their lives in service of the nation and its hallowed institutions of co-prosperity. Yet victory has made the IJA and IJN fat with arrogance. While nowhere near the levels of influence and rivalry as during the 1930s and 40s, the IJA and IJN, meaning the Imperial Japanese Army and the Imperial Japanese Navy, still duel each other for both funding and attention within the government. Any functioning government will need to try its best not to just keep the military's sticky fingers from interfering with the agenda, but also to make sure that neither faction is favored too much. Paranoia, after all, is a powerful thing in politics. Okay, mod info, the Cold Wars. The New Order of Last Days of Europe answers the questions of what a Cold War would look like in the scenario of the Axis victory in the Second World War. Mirroring its real-life counterpart, the world of the TNO is locked in a three-way standoff between the remaining powers of the Second World War: the Greater German Reich, the Empire of Japan, and the United States of America. Global domination is no longer fought directly within the battlefield between the great powers, seeking nothing but the demise of others. Rather, it is sought after through backroom dealings, international manipulation, economic competition, and expansion of a superpower's sphere of influence. TNO's gameplay differs greatly from the vanilla experience, with the use of unique gameplay aspects that are discussed below. Proxy wars. It does not mean that war is uncommon in the New Order. On the contrary, war is actually extremely common, and you will fight several as almost every nation. However, wars are not normally expressed through direct conflict, but instead as proxy wars. Proxy wars are wars between two nations who are backed by two larger nations, using their conflict as a way to battle one another without an outright war. These can also occur during civil wars, which are also exceedingly common. Well, I can attest to that. During a proxy war, nations at war with one another may find themselves being supported by an outside power. If nobody is playing as the backing power, then units will be gifted to the nation fighting the war. If a player is the backing power, however, they will be able to support their side via the volunteer system as in Vanilla Hearts of Iron 4. The Cold War interface. Of course, there is a way to measure and keep track of the contenders to global domination. The button in the shape of the nuclear symbol in the top bar will lead you to the Cold War interface. It will tell you everything you need to know about those competing in the Cold War, which is currently winning by how much and in what ways, along with other useful information. The Rankings tab shows you which country is currently in the lead, calculated by factors such as the military and economic power. The Tension tab records the palpability of relations between great powers, as well as the incidents that led to this development of tensions. The Spheres tab highlights the economic sphere of the major powers, showing their raw economic power and influence among other nations. Finally, the Nukes tab is discussed in the next entry. Nuclear warfare. The New Order, Last Days of Europe, ultimately takes place during the Cold War and not a world war. Each of the major three nations, the United States, Germany, and Japan, enjoy full nuclear triad capabilities as of 1962, locking the world under the fear of nuclear holocaust. As such, nations are ultimately at the whim of the superpowers of the world, and they are forever locked against one another without the means to secure an easy victory. Any war between the three superpowers will inevitably be World War III. When World War III is fought, it cannot end well. The sides will fight until one side begins to falter. If a nation feels that it is about to collapse, is unable to continue a war, or has their current territory overwhelmingly threatened, then nuclear war is an inevitability. If a nuclear strike is launched, it will be a matter of days until thousands of nuclear weapons are deployed in the war. If this happens, it is game over. I mean, we never even came close to this during our first playthrough, so hopefully it's not going to be different in this one. Mechanics. The economy. The New Order of Last Days of Europe features a complex economy mechanic. You can access your economic overview by clicking upon the globe sign in between the Research and the Cold War tabs. The foundation of your national economy is your GDP, which will be the key to the economic prosperity of your state. Your GDP needs to be balanced out with your debt. Every year, interest upon your debt will be deducted as an expense, and ending up with too high of a debt to GDP ratio could spell financial ruin. To avoid troubling economic times, keep a watchful eye on your income and your expenditures. Your income is determined by multiple factors, the most obvious of which being your GDP. Many other factors come to play, however, such as your industry, poverty rate, academia, and much more. On the other hand, you have your expenditures, the bane of any economist. Expenditures are a measure of factors such as military upkeep, social securities, construction projects, and more. Laws and social development, taking inspiration from the law system in Victoria II, the New Order Last Days of Europe features a detailed law system to express the specific policies of your nation, providing a greater immersion and complexity. Their policies are located under the political tab and include a wide range of policies to consider during the course of your playthrough. Each policy has its own effect on various game variables, with both pros and cons to each policy. Furthermore, each policy has effectiveness which can improve or worsen as the game goes on, with some being determined by buildings and funding. This determines the effects gained by the policy, and the more effective a policy, the better the effect. Finally, society development represents the progress of your country and can trend upwards towards positive progress or negative progress, upgrading or downgrading throughout your playthrough. And country-specific mechanics. Many of the countries in New Order feature expansive scripted GUIs designed to add more depth to your gameplay experience and make peacetime gameplay more interactive. Decision scripted GUIs are built directly into the Decision tab and can be accessed simply by opening the tab. This includes the Tomsk Duma GUI, the South African Referendum GUI, and many others. On the other hand, full scripted GUIs are accessed via the Politics tab using a button located below your country's leader's portrait, next to the head of a government's portrait. These full scripted GUIs tend to be much more in-depth and are oftentimes vital to the country's gameplay experience. This includes the United States voting, the Speer Zollverein GUI, and the Japan Legislature GUI, and several others. Furthermore, more scripted GUIs also feature an info button, which when hovered over or clicked on will display helpful information on how the interface works and other features of the integrated mechanic. So sorry for a lot of reading, but this was just a big refresh on what lies ahead of us. And I can see that we're already 40 minutes, and I might even split this first episode into 2 parts. There's just so much happening. So the Ruin team, here are the credits. We should thank all of these amazing people who participated on the mod's development. In memory of Southboy Anarchist and Nikon Behasin. And legal information, here's the fair use statement. So, Banzai. So we finally enter the game. I mean, really, the game is super complex and they've done a ton for this. So let us start by actually wow. Yeah, we have a lot of nations. Okay, so you are... Okay, so the nations that are red, which are not these ones, but these ones are a puppet. Yep, and they are a subject. While the ones, Thailand, Burma, what is this? Kampuchea, Kingdom of Kampuchea, Vietnam, those are allies and part of our sphere of influence. So hold on. And these islands, my apology, these islands are all ours, including Hawaii. And we have, yep, as I expected, we have 2 ports in United States. That is what I remember. So we have Rafuko here. Rafuko, Port of Los Angeles. At the height of World War II, the port of Los Angeles employed almost 100,000 Americans. These days, only a small fraction of that number turn up for work every day, and a different flag flies over the warships that fill the harbor. As one of the 2 Japanese concessions bordering the American mainland, the port of LA is a constant hotspot of world tension. Japanese and US soldiers watch each other from behind checkpoints, and both the sailors of the IJN and the residents of LA hope their uncomfortable proximity never escalates to hostility. While some demand the United States take action and reclaim it, their pleas fall deaf. For now, perhaps one day, a president bold enough may take back the ports, or possibly even more. Okay, and this one, the Cuvco port, port of San Francisco. Much like its European namesake, the Paris of the West is a city divided. Though most of the city remains in the USA, the port facilities have been held by Japan since 1945. One of the farthest flung territories of the Japanese Empire, the port of San Francisco is a major asset to the sphere. The tiny sliver of the Japanese territory, along with its southern counterpart in Los Angeles, are a constant source of tensions between the 2 world superpowers. But as long as the Japanese retain their ability to immediately threaten the entire West Coast, they're happy to pay that price. While some demand that the United States take... Okay, we've read that. So we have Port of San Francisco and Port of Los Angeles. Okay. We also have Hawaii. Yep, the entirety of it. Though this one honestly should be a fallout zone. I mean, depending on what kind of bomb they have, but Hakkō. There's 684,000 people living here. Interesting. Well, okay. And what kind of nations do we have? So there's Manchuria, which is our ally, actually. They're independent, led by Aisin Gyarapui, Mengyang United Autonomous Government, Seihoku Hamegun, Republic of China, that's the reformed, Jinshan Administrative Office, Guangzhou Province, Warlord. It's a warlord regime of foreign power. Guangxi, State of Guangzhou, Hokkaido, which is part of our core territory, same as... What do they call it? They call it Taiwan or Formosa? No, it's just... Okay, split, there's no name. Gotcha. And what else do we have here? Yunnan, okay. Union of Burma and Azad Hind government. So the... Okay, so this is what you guys mentioned during the Black Ice playthrough, that this part is actually part of the co-prosperity sphere. So our reach goes all the way into India. Gotcha. And then Union of Burma, Republic of Thailand, Kingdom of Laos, Vietnam, Kingdom of Kampuchea. Then what do we have here? Northern Malay, which is okay, that's part of Thailand. And this one is independent, so okay. You are at war. Yamamoto Moichiro, leader of the Shonan Marasi Guiseibu, and you're at war with the UMAJF. No, actually you are the aggressor here. That's interesting. So this part is not under our control. So Kuala Lumpur and Malacca are not, but Singapore is... It's part of Republic of Indonesia. Or wait, no, this is Singapore, isn't it? Sionan. Straits of Malacca. Yes, Singapore is out of our control. Okay, that's interesting to know. The modern city of Singapore was constructed by the British as a trading post in the early 19th century. The island was intended to be the cornerstone of Britain's naval defense strategy in Southeast Asia, only to be captured by Japanese forces before the Royal Navy could arrive. The city's multi-ethnic population of Chinese, Maldives, and Indians would once again find itself a pivotal fortress of foreign occupiers as a result of the Malayan emergency. In a time of uncertainty, who will rule Singapore by the end of the 60s remains an open question. Okay, but Indonesia is part of the co-prosperity sphere, as are you, Nampu Guisekan. So this is probably a direct result of our war, and this part is actually directly our territory. Okay, so that's interesting. Where is the economy here? So we can check the co-prosperity sphere. So we are obviously the most and richest nation with 251 billion American dollars worth of economy. Republic of China has 37.59 billion, Manchuria 34.78 billion. So these are our biggest, second and third biggest contributors to the co-prosperity sphere. State of Guangdong, I have to figure out how to pronounce these, 21.21 billion. Azad Hind government, 9.78 billion. So only these are above 10. And then we sharply drop. Indonesia 5.85, Taiwan 3.74, Second Philippine Republic 2.4. Oh, that's the Philippines. I haven't checked that. So, who are you? Okay, you are part. So the Second Philippines Republic. The Philippine Republic itself is not, and they have very bad relations with our puppet. And then there's the PKP United Front, which is a revolutionary front. Okay, so the Second Philippines Republic. There's definitely going to be something happening in the Philippines from the looks of it. And then we have the Empire of Vietnam, 2.48. Burma, 2.46. Yunnan, 2.46. Guangxi, 1.96. Yinshan Administrative Office 1.43, Mengyang Autonomous Zone 1.2, Guangzhou 1.16, Seihoku Homegun 1.07, Shonan Marae 1.04, and then we are sub 1 billion. Kingdom of Kampuchea 637 million, Kingdom of Laos 514 million, Nampu Guisekan 372 million, Amur 131 million, Bhutan 89 million. Okay, so I think we haven't even seen Bhutan as an independent. Where are you? That's Brunei. Okay, well, our total sphere's GDP is 383.535 billion. Okay, so we have about 2/3 of that. And we are a second largest economy in the world after United States with a 322 billion. We have 251. Germany has 225 now, Italy has 104, United Kingdom 85.9, and then Republic of China is 37, so we occupy the first 6th, 7th place, whereas there's Manchuria, then the French state 42.24 billion, Argentina 24, and Iberian Union 24. Okay, I think that's enough for first episode. We've actually just gotten in here. So what I'm gonna do in the next episode, in part 2, contrary to my expectations, we're actually gonna use that one as the setup episode. This one was just to get a glimpse of what we're gonna be dealing with here. You can see that it's very complex. The Japanese government, the foreign policy, we have the government overview GUI. There's a lot of things that we will need to go through in the next episode, but I think another 50 minutes of raw footage should be enough, and then in episode 3 we are going to start. So thank you very much for joining me. I hope you enjoyed this brief introduction. Again, there's going to be a lot of reading, but we're going to Jesus Christ, I missed you. And from, episode 2, we are going to set everything up, and episode 3 is going to be the start of the game. So, see you in the next episode. Till then, you guys take care.